Hello, good afternoon,
And good morning.
and good morning indeed. We are in
I'll reply to that part.
the SIG team is in different time zones indeed. Here we are almost at the end of the working day. In Canada, it's still very early. And please, for the ones joining now, you can briefly introduce yourself via the chat so that we have a virtual tour de table and that we can dive into the content straight away. So let me maybe let's kick it off. We also have our recording the session, so afterwards you can catch up, or people who were not able to join today, they can catch up later on. So welcome to the first research development session of the Living Labs SIG. So the idea is that we want to start this kind of interaction with you guys more often to see to improve, let's say, the research quality and really to stimulate the collaborations between you, because I think there's a lot of Living Lab activities going on. There's a lot of other initiatives, other evolutions, revolutions even, that are very interesting and where Living Labs really can play a role. But the idea is that we really want to improve and want to increase the research output. So let's me first start with the agenda for today. So we will briefly introduce the SIG. The special SIG stands for Special Interest Group. What is it all about? What are we doing and who are we? Then we will have a part where Chris will take the lead on research avenues. What do we really see as where research should be heading or is heading right now? And then I also compiled a couple of tips and tricks. And with some upcoming events, I think it can be very relevant to use those or to incorporate those in maybe your outlines that you are preparing for the ISPIM conferences. Then I prepared an overview on some special issues on Living Labs, some which of them have been published already a long time, so that you can, maybe some of them you will know, some of them you maybe don't know, but that you can also take this into account, where a lot of discussion, a lot of debate was being going on, so that you already have, let's say, the basic knowledge of them, and also some ongoing special issues and maybe some future ideas. And then Lucia will also introduce the ISPIM events. And if we still have time, we will have a short Q&A. So without further ado, let's go. What is the SIG all about? In 2022, we existed for 10 years. So now it's already our 12th year that we are active. And this is, let's say, a bit of our mission statement. We really want to enhance the understanding of Living Lab concept, and we want to do it by having high quality research. But I think the main goal is that we also want to stimulate collaboration, and collaboration between researchers, managers, and practitioners. A lot of Living Lab or Living Labbers are a bit in between, are very practitioner oriented, but also have a little bit of a research mindset. I think we want to reap the best of both worlds, so that we have really high quality research on very high quality practice. That's really the idea behind it. And with the SIG, we want to stimulate these kind of activities. And these sessions are there to really exchange in terms of the research. What are the research? Where should it be going? What should we do? Should you do? Also, we want to be a matchmaker, facilitator between the European network of Living Labs, which is mainly, I would say, practitioner-oriented, and the ISPIM network, which is a combination of practitioners and researchers, but also a broader innovation management community. I think there's a lot of lessons still to be learned, exchanges to be made, and we really want to take this matchmaking and facilitation to the next level. And this session is an example of that. The main activities are during the innovation conference, where we have had a lot of speaker workshops, invited speaker workshops, some scientific sessions, hot topic discussions, etc., and panels. And that's really the idea behind the special interest group. So together with Seppo Leminen, who couldn't be here today, and Chris McPhee, who will introduce himself, I think, when the part about the research is coming up. And myself, so I'm from IMEC, and I have did my PhD in 2015 already on Living Labs, but still there's so much to learn and still to investigate, that I really think a special interest group and this nature is still needed and is still very much worthwhile. So what did we do in 11 years of Living Lab SIG? This year is our 12th year. And as said, in Copenhagen, we celebrated, we had some celebrations there of our activities. And in total, we had more than 100 Living Lab papers already and presentations during the ISPIM conferences. We had more than 5 special issues in the TIM Review and Sustainability and in the Journal of Innovation Management. A little bit more about that in the third part of this session. We had 5 panels and workshops. We also participated regularly to the Junior Researchers Lab, very interesting feature at the ISPIM conferences, which really gathers junior researchers and which show them the ropes in terms of research in all kinds of domains. We had 9 invited speaker sessions and a lot of invited speakers, some very nice big names like Anna Stalbust, STV Almiral, Rob Wilson, Koen Vervoort, Jasper Lund. We had some presidents and some directors of the NL. We had the Austrian Mobility Living Labs. And this year, we also have some very nice speakers lined up. So we started in 2012 in Barcelona. In fact, it went almost by accident because the year before I was the first time at an ISPIM conference. It was somewhere in Spain. I can't remember the city anymore, but it was somewhere in Spain. And we had some Living Lab papers spread across the program. And I said to Stefan, hey, why don't we have a special Living Labs session? He would say, okay, find some backers and start it up. And in 2012, Seppo there had his famous paper on a recipe for innovation through Living Lab networks, which also declared that one of the main ingredients of this recipe for Living Labbers is passion. And I think this is really great and what drives a lot of the Living Labs people. The helmet is there because we then had STV Almiral, who was one of the invited speakers at that time. And he came in rushing in his session with wearing his helmet because you had two locations of the ESADE Business School, and he happened to be at the wrong location. So he really rushed in, put out his helmet, and started his talk. But he was just in time, also something that is quite common within the Living Labs community, being just in time and working towards the deadlines. Here's some images, and it's sometimes a bit harsh to see how young you were looking only in 2013 here in Helsinki with Bas Bakana there, also with Seppo here. 2014 was in Dublin. In Dublin, we also had some nice anecdote. There we had Rob Wilson also joining very late because he ended up being very late the night before. Because also maybe good to mention, at that time the ISPIM band saw the light of day. I think 2 years before. And the ISPIM band normally plays on Tuesday, and the sessions of Living Labs were also are on the Tuesday, but now they played on the Monday. So when the ISPIM band plays on the Monday, there was a bit of a party and we had invited speakers running late. But as we were, Living Labbers are also very good at improvising. So in the end, everything went well. 2015, we were in Budapest, also very nice conference. 2016, we presented some publications from the European Network of Living Labs. We had the president, we had the director also coming over presenting their stuff. We both won an award, which was very nice in Vienna 2017, and we invited the Urbane Mobiliteitslaboren. I think really a best practice on how a country sets up Living Labs in a certain region or in a certain domain, I would say, within Mobility Living Labs, and they really facilitated building these kinds of Living Lab nests, which triggered a lot of interesting projects. So we invited the people over there to come and talk about these initiatives. 2018, we were in Stockholm. We were also having a session in the Junior Researcher Lab over there. Very nice year. Florence, also a very nice conference. And here then, of course, we had the COVID, which we didn't have the invited speakers sessions during those years. We still had Living Labs papers during the COVID years, but then it was very happy to meet each other again in 2022 in Copenhagen, where we also celebrated 10 years of the SIG. And last year we were in Ljubljana, where we also had a very lovely gathering. And we hope to see a lot of you in Estonia and Tallinn for the next innovation conference, or at one of the other ISPIM events, which Lucia will introduce to you. And this is a sneak peek on the invited speakers. And I'm very happy that we have Paavo, who will be talking about data in B2B markets. This is a new context. AI and data are all over the place. So we will be reflecting here on what is the role of living labs, of living lab research, of living lab way of doing and approaching projects in this new context, in this which is flooded with AI innovation, with data, with new business models. So what is the role of living labs? This will be the topic of the invited speaker session. So we have Pavo, who will be talking about that. Alberto, a colleague from the sitcom.ai project, which is about a testing and experimentation facility about AI. So we have 4 of those in Europe. And they test in real life. So we have a lot of links with living lab, but what is different? Is a TEF, is it a living lab or not? Or how should we approach and deal with that? And we have also Ben Robijst, who's also been present at a couple of ISPIM conferences, also had some very nice and influential papers. He will be talking about futures thinking and what the role of futures thinking is in the context of AI and data. And again, futures thinking, living labs, how do the two compare to each other and how can they be combined in the process? So I think this will be a very interesting session. But without further ado, I now come really to the core of what this is all about. What do we see as research avenues for living labs and how do we think? And we hope to, let's say, inspire you and trigger your creativity for your next research papers or your next research projects. So Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dimitri. So yes, I'm Chris McPhee. I'm an innovation management specialist working for Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. But before this, I spent 9 years as the editor-in-chief of the Technology Innovation Management Review, or the TIM Review, and that's where I first developed this passion for living labs and had the opportunity to work with so many living labs researchers around the world, including several who are on this call. I see, but since joining Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada about 4.5 years ago, I've been working, helping build a network of agro-ecosystem living labs. So we now have a network across Canada, 14 living labs focused on developing innovations to tackle climate change, involving farmers and partners and researchers and broad diversity of partners to work together using the living labs approach. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about something we just recently did in terms of an event. We co-hosted the first international forum on agro-ecosystem living labs just this past October in Montreal, because it's, but I wanted to share it, even though I'm clearly situated in the agricultural domain with our application of living labs. I think some of the themes that emerged from the event, themes that even were preset by the scientific committee, but then others that emerged during the event, I think may be of interest to anyone working in the living labs domain, and it'd be interesting to see what kind of themes we have in common from that. So, okay, Dimitri, if you could go to the next slide. So the reason we had this first international forum was basically we'd been working for 5 years on this agro-ecosystem living lab concept. We'd first introduced it at the G20. I've spoken about what is an agro-ecosystem living lab at various ISPIM events, but because it is a particular unique type of living lab, I won't go into too much detail on that here because that's not really the purpose. But this represented 5 years of work, and we wanted to take stock of that, highlight what were the achievements, what were the challenges since 2018, and basically share different best practices, insights from case studies, and what was the happening globally, because frankly, we've seen an explosion of living labs around the world in agriculture during this time period, and particularly you can see it. I mentioned our network of 14 living labs across the country. We have more than 1,000 people actively involved in our living labs here, but also around the world, particularly in Europe. We see the European Commission pushing heavily on living labs. It's a reminder of sort of the mid-2000s where this was being applied. Generally, now we're seeing it really very much in agriculture, particularly there's an agroecology partnership, an effort to create a network of agroecology living labs across Europe, and also one of the 5 European Commission missions is the soil mission, where they are seeking to launch 100 living labs and lighthouses across Europe. So this is a major area of increased interest in living labs globally. Next slide, please, Dmitry. Our scientific committee established 4 themes for the conference. One was around promoting innovation, basically around the productivity of agri-ecosystems, but capturing the experience of the scientists working in the open innovation approach. Basically that was, a main pillar of what we were doing. Also looking at fostering transitions towards sustainable food systems. This is, I would say, this transitions, as I mentioned, agroecology, for example. This is a major effort in Europe. There are also going to be major, as I mentioned, living labs being launched, but also tremendous research opportunities, particularly around living labs for transitions. We also identified empowering participation, strengthening participatory governments in living labs, how to support inclusion in these living labs. And then the one that we'll touch on again later in this session, evaluating success, looking at the kind of indicators we can use to measure success, in innovation incomes, and then other impacts beyond the living labs, which is again a theme that I think we'll touch on again later. Next slide, please. So in terms of the overall program, we had tremendous interest in from what I call from papers. We had, for a first time event focused in a relatively niche area, we had about 60 research submissions to this event when we only had space for 20 of them. We also had some invited speakers on top of that, some virtual posters, and we had a conference element, but then also a field visit to one of our living labs near Montreal. And in total, we had more than 250 attendees, 17 countries, 35 organizations. It was really quite, as I say, for what we might agree is a relatively niche area in the living labs world. This was a tremendously successful event in terms of the interest and research output. Next slide, please. So we had a range of invited speakers. I put this up just to kind of touch on some of the international flavor, obviously from Canada, the European Commission, the Already Project on Agroecology, France, Argentina, the United States, and so on. The next slide, please. And we heard from the event was a lot of the the main outcomes that have been happening over the last 5 years with the use of this approach: the acceleration of transdisciplinary research, promotion of innovative solutions to tackle specific agriculture and agri-food challenges, opportunities for increased funding and secure funding in the sector, improving stakeholder involvement in innovation activities, and creating theoretical frameworks to guide empirical research. Those were the sort of what people felt had been happening since applying this approach. Next slide, please. And then what came out during the event were, very interesting themes. And these are things that I think, as I mentioned, these are probably not entirely unique to agriculture, but may reflect some things generally in the Living Labs research community. But there was a great need to provide fluid circulation of knowledge in the living labs, knowledge exchange among stakeholders, and knowledge transfer as well, and basically sharing testimonials, case studies, examples, stories. This was a real need that was felt by the community. And in terms of the further knowledge exchange, looking at what types of people were involved in the living labs. I mean, one of the challenges identified was the need for a greater involvement of social scientists. We have a lot of, in agri-ecosystem living labs particularly, there's a lot of emphasis on biophysical research to support the innovation activities. But in terms of integrating social scientists, that's seen, and economists seen as very important, integrating local and indigenous knowledge, and also exchanging insights between the different disciplines to ensure this transdisciplinary work happens and it's not just a lot of sort of siloed work within a project. The user-centered innovation aspect of it, often involves the farmers as users in a lot of these activities, looking at opportunities to promote peer-to-peer learning and understanding the individual and institutional contexts, and helping that transdisciplinary work and that collaboration work. There was also a need for monitoring expectations, basically, trying to negotiate as these projects start, addressing contrasting needs and expectations, clear communication, emphasizing these cultural differences, because it is, it's in practice, bringing all of these groups together for this transdisciplinary work remains challenging, and frameworks and tools are still needed for that. The importance of trust came out very clearly. Trust in relationship building, not just in terms of those relationships, but also even legal aspects, communication and governance. That was another important theme, and best practices were needing to be shared there. And then time. Time came through as a very clear message. The Living Labs approach is seen as a way to accelerate the innovation and adoption of solutions. However, there's a recognition that it takes time for this work to happen. It takes time for the trust and relationship building to happen, and that can be a real paradox in using the approach. And this need for evaluation. Again, we'll talk about this later, but being able to document what's happening, establish reference points, make comparisons, really share the outcomes. I think the Living Labs community has been very good at saying what they're doing, maybe not so good about saying how well it went after the fact. And so that's quite important. And then depending on the model and the geographical context and so on, there can be challenges with funding cycles and the need for long-term policy support. I feel very fortunate in the Living Labs program that we are working on. We have a 10-year funding horizon for our Living Labs work, which is quite remarkable and maybe exceptional. And a lot of Living Labs are working on shorter timescales, but with innovation work that is more of a long-term effort. Next slide, please. So this was just a slide just mentioning that we had not only the conference work, but an actual field visit to see the work that had been happening in action, which was organized by the lead partner of one of our Living Labs in Living Lab Quebec, l'Union de producteurs agricoles in Quebec. And we had about 90 people show up on the farm to kind of see this in action and interact, see the practices in the field, but also interact with the farmer and other participants in the Living Lab. Next slide, please. As an outcome event, what people expressed that they wanted as a community was more presentations and workshops, including virtual ones in between main events, creating an online repository of the learning, consolidating the science related to Living Labs. Again, a strong emphasis on impact, the metrics and evaluation, and then building different communities of Living Labs and Living Labs researchers. The next step for us was to do a panel at COP28 in Dubai on this topic. It was kind of an echo event to further promote this. We see agriculture becoming more as an area of solutions for climate change as opposed to a problem. And so it's a very rich area, I think, for future research and practice. We have publications from the event going in the special issue of the Journal Innovation Management, which we'll talk about later. And we're going to do a second international forum in Europe in 2025. Next slide, please. This is just a picture of the panel that happened in COP28. We had representation from Canada, US, France, and European Commission. Again, and the next slide. So that was kind of a quick overview of that event. I'll take this opportunity to plug another event that might be of interest. It's always good, I think, in our community, although we're here within the ISPIM special interest group on Living Labs, we're obviously encouraging you to attend the ISPIM events, but I think it's important for us to share other opportunities for Living Labs research. This is one I happen to be involved in happening in May. This is ACFAS, this is a French-only event, but I raise it just because it's coming up with a deadline in February as well, if you're interested in sharing work on research in rural areas, but it's a very Living Lab friendly focused event. So yeah, that's the last slide. Dimitri, I'll hand things back to you.
Yeah, I was messing up the slides. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yes. So in terms, I would say now, what can we do with it? And I will very briefly return to this one, because I think here, 4 of these elements for me are within research very important, within general Living Labs research, not only in agroecology, but in Living Labs in general. It's really the acceleration of this trans or inter or multidisciplinary, how you want to call it, research, because we also see it in all kinds of sustainability related topics and themes. You cannot focus on one discipline. And I think in general, Living Labs are really relying on multidisciplinary stakeholders. It's quadruple helix, but it's also multidisciplinary stakeholders. Focusing on that regards, how Living Labs increase or facilitate or are good, or sometimes maybe not good, at facilitating this kind of transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary research. I think that is really a topic that requires a lot of research attention. Funding, sustainability, then in the meaning of the being able to keeping your Living Lab alive, to secure funding or to keep your organization alive and kicking over multiple projects. I think this is also very important. I know this is also being dealt with at the European Network of Living Labs. They award a label to your Living Lab if you adhere to some criteria. But how can we see these Living Labs surviving and also, let's say, reinventing their mission and keeping up to speed with the ecosystem? I think the setting up is one thing, but how to sustain. I think this can be also the topic of research, to get best practices, but also to investigate why did some initiatives die? What was particular about them? What can we learn of these failed cases, or what happened there? So I think that point is very important for research. Stakeholder involvement, I think there's already a lot of literature on that part, but yeah, a Living Lab is all about involvement of different stakeholders. You can focus on one, then it's the user involvement. I think that receives already a lot of attention, also links up with the user innovation literature, but in the broader sense, other stakeholders, how to engage the public sector, how to engage private sector, how to engage SMEs, how to engage startups, what is the relation between a startup process and a Living Lab, for example. I think these are all very interesting topics that can be dealt with from a Living Lab perspective. And then, of course, the theoretical frameworks to guide empirical research and the practice. I think this is also very important to also make links. And there, I think we see as a SIG and there a role to also connect to other innovation management disciplines. As a Living Lab, we don't have all the, let's say, the knowledge inside. No, a Living Lab is a way of looking at innovation, which uses other disciplines, which uses other innovation management approaches, which are already there, but where do we want to connect? Open innovation literature, user innovation literature, but also tons of other literatures, ecosystem literature. There was a very interesting paper and special issue released, I think only very recently by Marcel Boers. I think it's very much worthwhile investigating that one. It's about ecosystems. I think how to link Living Labs with ecosystem, also very important and very interesting research avenues, I would say. Okay, now on to the slides that I also added. This paper for me is also a bit a milestone. It's very critical towards Living Labs. It's Are Living Labs effective exploring the evidence? To give the short answer, they say, no, the evidence is not that convincing, but they cite a lot of the research that is ongoing. And in one way, I agree with this paper, but because the evidence there should be more evidence. But for me, it's a call to action for us as Living Lab researchers, to really prove what is really the added value of Living Labs. And I think we should stop and putting everything under the same umbrella, Living Labs can cover a lot of variety. I think we should embrace the variety, and we should not look for the one single definition. We have enough of papers regarding that, but look at specific approaches. What works in this context and what does not work, and why did it work? And also the longer term. I think this is very important. So I think as a research community, we should be engaging in this academic debate, which is started here. And the fact that in Technovation, such an article is devoted to Living Labs is already very nice. It's showing that we are doing a good job, that we are getting attention. But now we should, I say we should answer. And we are, me and a couple of people at IMEC, we are already formulating answers, but I hope that you also will step up and will provide some of the answers, and that we show that in this and this context, Living Labs are really effective. So what are then my tips and tricks for research? I think you should clearly position what you are doing within the Living Lab literature itself, not be, let's say, agree with everything, but take a position. Okay, this is my definition, and in this definition, I am within this kind of, I use this level of analysis, and this is how, and this is now what my analysis leads to. So don't retell the old story. This is what you added here, Chris, and that I was talking about the lack of unifying definition. Yeah, but embrace the diversity and describe the phenomenon and describe it. Okay, this is this kind of living lab, and with this kind of outcomes, with these kind of stakeholders in this domain, and this is what we did, and this is what the results were. Because there I would say we have tons of studies that are purely descriptive. I think a case study is good, but then what does the case study add to the knowledge? What did you find that was interesting, or that was unexpected, or that did go well, or that went wrong? So really the impact assessment and the comparison of approaches is really, really important. So if it's a single case study, add a lot of context and add a lot of the outcomes, I would say. And also more longer term, we have now the ambition of doing an impact paper on a living lab that we were part of, that got quite some success, but that stopped 2-3 years ago. And now is really the time to really assess, okay, but what did we realize? What are really the more long-term outcomes? It had been running for more than 5 years. So we can now really see and capture the learnings. So we should sometimes take a step back and get out of our comfort zone as practitioners, always doing new stuff, but also taking some time to reflect back on older projects and older things that we did. So write about what worked, but also what did not work. I think it's very important to also have these failed cases, which living labs didn't last, didn't survive. Okay, but what happened there? I think it's very relevant and very interesting. That was also one of the criticism of Pascal Leva and Cooper, that it was always the, let's say, the positive stories. So let's also get some of the failed stories in to learn. And what I was saying about the longer term effects and the unexpected outcome spillovers takes some time, takes some distance, and then it comes in handy, I would say, to collaborate with colleagues or collaborate with other practitioners or other researchers and let them have a go at your research results, to really have a more unbiased view and to also have, let's say, a more external perspective looking in. So I really urge you to start collaborating and to look for collaborations across countries, across living labs, across disciplines, because it's not only in the living lab project itself that we should be multidisciplinary, it's also in the research part, I believe. And that's also why we will be having this kind of session in not in an online format, but in a physical format at the Tallinn conference. We will have, after all the research, the Living Lab research and practitioner sessions have been taken place at the ISPIM conference, we will have a dedicated session to discuss these kind of issues, to discuss collaborations, to discuss, okay, what did we learn out of all the presentations, and where do we see avenues for collaboration, so that we can really bundle and combine the forces of each other and really come with better and more focused and stronger research, I would say, and even more outcomes and impact. That are my tips and tricks. A bit about special issues on Living Labs. There have been a lot of them. We had at the time one home, let's say almost a home journal on Living Labs. And that's also, and I think it's a really a very nice story that we got Chris, who was really the main editor, who was really did a brilliant job in getting really some scope and making the papers very readable and also very practical. What are the practical implementations, but still have the scientific rigor as well. So I think that was a very nice example. We had 10 special issues there. I think there's a lot of the debates and discussions about terminology, about the definitions. You can find them there, but use this. I would say use it as as let's say as the bundle of knowledge that you can reuse in your papers and build further on the discussions that were ongoing in all these different special issues. Unfortunately, at this moment, there seems to be a hiatus at the TIM review, so it's not accepting any publications at the moment, but maybe in due time they will restart again. But it's open access, and I think there's a lot of interesting material to be found in here. We also had a quite nice, I think, special issue with Info, and the Info journal is now renamed to Digital Policy, Regulation and Governance. So it's also open access. You can find it online. I put in the link. Also some very interesting discussions going on in there. In sustainability, we also had one with also quite some papers from the ISPIM conferences, but also from the Open Living Lab days. On innovation management and living labs in the sustainability journal. Also, the International Journal of Innovation Management is connected to ISPIM. It's like the home journal of ISPIM. And from time to time, also some living lab papers have seen a reworked version being published in the iGEM. So if you come over to one of the ISPIM events, there's always a chance that you are being picked up by this very nice journal. So that really gives you a potential pathway from a conference proceeding to really a good journal publication. So iGEM is a possibility. And now we are working on the Journal of Innovation Management together with Anne-Laure Mention, who's always present at the ISPIM conferences. And we're working on a special issue composed of ISPIM papers that have been reworked, and also some extra submissions have been accepted. But it will be also, I think, a quite nice special issue that we are now co-creating all together. Okay, now I'll hand over the word to Lucia about future ISPIM events.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Lucia. So yeah, with ISPIM, we do usually like 3 events per year. One is like a very big one. And then we have, which is in Europe, it happens usually in June. And then we have 2 smaller ones. They're called ISPIM Connects, and they happen outside of Europe usually. So who attends the conference? Usually it's like academia, about 60%. And then the rest, like small and medium companies, consulting, government, and basically they are 50-50 female and male, and then yeah, age from 20 to 80, so it's very diverse. So yeah, what happens there? We have many panel discussions, we have interviews with thought leaders, we have workshops, paper presentations, innovation tours where we go to the city and see innovation at certain location. And then, yeah, we also have great networking events and partying, because Dimitri showed you many pictures before how they stand all serious, but I also have many pictures when they dance. So yeah, our first event this year is happening in Brazil. I think I saw in the chat that we have someone from Brazil. So yeah, in April, from 8th to 10th April, we are going to Porto Alegre. The call for submission is still open for 10 days. So go to the website and check if you're interested to submit your abstract. This will be like a smaller event. We I guess, expect around 250 people or something like that. Dimitri, could you go to the next slide? So after Brazil, we're going to Tallinn, to Estonia. This will be our big event of the year. Usually we have around 550 people from 50 different countries or even more. And yeah, it's very, very busy event. We have many things going on. I believe that many of you already went there. The call for submissions is still open until 2nd of February, so make sure to submit. It's a very short deadline for you if you haven't seen it before. But if you need an extra day or something, just send us an email. And yeah, our final event, if you can go to the next slide, is happening in Osaka. It's in December, and call for submission will be open until 4th of October. This is the same as Brazil, a bit smaller event, also around 250 people, more local, but very, very nice. That's pretty much it. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thanks a lot. And maybe to give an update, already talked about it, but it was maybe a bit scattered. So we will be there at the innovation conference in Tallinn, but the idea is from for the upcoming years that we also will have a larger presence at the other and the more smaller events, because there indeed you have a bit more room for discussion interaction amongst a smaller group. Indeed, the innovation conference is great, but it's of course the big event, and we have been focusing mostly on there to have our invited speakers, etc. But we would love to have also more papers on the side events, and that we have a bit more, let's say, in-depth discussion and some more room to go more in-depth in there. So this year in Tallinn, the invited speaker session, as I was saying, on AI and data and the role Living Labs can play over there. So we will be talking about the devs, about new business models, etc., and what the role can be of Living Labs. We will have a physical gathering where we will also talk about research avenues and potential collaborations. Very practical, very hands-on to see, okay, who is doing what. We can share our own research roadmaps, as I could call it, and could see, are there any collaborations? Are there any papers that we can work on together? Because I really believe in this. If you check some of the TIM review issues, I've done quite some of them. For example, the collaboration with someone who came more from the public sector, innovation sector. They were working on innovation labs, as they call it. So we simply compared what is happening in your public sector innovation labs, what is happening at Living Labs. And we made this, I think, which is a very, very nice comparison paper. What is the difference between the two approaches and what can we learn from each other? Same we did with someone else that came more from a lean startup perspective. Okay, how does a lean startup approach compare with a Living Lab approach? And like this, it's fun because you collaborate with someone from a very different discipline, for a very different world, and you exchange and you learn even about your own topic. As you need to explain what you are doing for someone else, you learn their perspective. And I think writing is also a process in which you really internalize, what am I in fact doing? You're taking a step back and reflecting on your own practice, which can be very, I would say, inspiring to really see, okay, maybe this I should have done another way, and I think it can be a very nice time of reflection to really write about it. So it's also, I would say, my main piece of advice. Try to take some steps back, involve some other people so that you have an outside perspective, but also that you can share the work, because we know it's quite some work to really write a good paper, but make a team, make an author team, and then you can divide the work and you can even improve the work of what you are doing. Okay, we have 15 minutes left. I think we are at the end, unless Chris, you still have some other points that needed to be made or some remarks on what I said.
Yeah, I just wanted to add about in terms of the opportunities for submissions to ISPIM. The deadline is coming up, but I do want to highlight that there's an option for full research paper for something that is, work you have completed and you're writing up into a paper, and you come and give this research presentation and submit a paper to the conference. That we also have research in progress sessions. So if there's some research that you want feedback on, that you want to present and then get with more time for feedback and input on that work. There's that as another format, and there's also a format in terms of innovation and practice stories and cases that you can do, which is not necessarily from an academic or research perspective, but is more on the practice thing. So there's the different options there for ISPIM submissions if you haven't been to one before.
Indeed, and it doesn't require a full paper submission yet. It's an extended outline where you have different elements that you need to fill out, but it's not a full paper. And you need to make the structure, and of course, the content needs to be there. But it's faster, it's quicker than writing the full paper, and you really get in-depth feedback of the reviewers, which also maybe which allows me to make the connection with the Open Living Lab days. They always run in September. So in a way, the time frames fits very nicely. And so in fact, you can have your go now and you can submit your research proposal or your outline. You can get feedback. If you're not accepted, you can have a second chance for the European Network of Living Labs, where the deadline is, I think mostly, I don't know, it's not fixed
Koen
yet.
is on the call, Dimitri.
I'm here.
We don't have a deadline yet, they could.
And you can stop sharing the screen, Dimitri.
It will be towards the end of March to submit it, I think, or early April. We're still setting it up, so it's no time soon, actually. It will happen 23 to 26, if I'm not mistaken, of September in Timișoara in Romania this year. And the focus will be on impact. Referring to what you said, Chris, the team will certainly talk about impact. And from ENO perspective, if I may, in 30 seconds, what we will propose as research avenues, but we will have different talks later onwards, Dimi, on it as well. When we look at our network, we are trying to start up now to create a gold mine of data for all you guys, because we want to assess all our members on a yearly basis to actually check that sustainability, which was one of the pain points, to start trying to identify the impact created by Living Labs. And then more specifically on a third thing is harmonization on how does that help both of these previous factors to become more sustainable. Harmonization of tools, methods, infrastructures, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we will be mainly focusing on, if you ask me. But of course, we are multiple. So, but this is what has already been said for years now. And that we should start pushing our members more to write about this and to provide those proof points which you are looking for. And I think we found a way now to collect the data in such a way that we can start comparing not only cross regions but also cross sectoral and cross types of living labs, and hopefully we can provide you as a research community data on exploring and supporting you in doing this research as well, because as you know, ENOL office doesn't host researchers in the office, so we are here to support the research community. Well, not everybody knows. We are a member organization, and in the office we have project managers, we have people like me, senior stakeholder strategists, we have of course capacity building, a big block, and for the rest it's advocacy and supporting research, but not doing research, because we would be totally biased, of course, because we have access to so much more information than all you.
So that's very interesting information, and I will repeat it there. So the timelines are also very nicely interconnected in a way. So you can have your ISPIM submission, and if you have the bad news that you're not accepted, you can use the feedback and you can resubmit. But then it's directly the full paper that we do for the Open Living Lab days. But in that way, you have two chances to get it right. So that there's a very nice possible interaction between the two.
And we have the same types of submissions, actually, like you were mentioning, Chris. We have research in progress, full research, and we think it's called practitioners' presentations in our conference.
So I open the floor. Are there any questions or feedback, or maybe remarks, or some point you wish to make? We still have 10 minutes left, so Don't be shy. Was this interesting for you? Did you learn new things? Or was this, how did I say it, old wine and new bags?
Of course, it was interesting. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm always happy to hear new things, and definitely, yeah. And we are planning to hopefully submit something, one of the two, or maybe both.
Indeed, Abdul Razul is one of the, let's say, familiar faces. You also recognize him in one of the later photos. So yeah, it would be a pleasure, of course, of having you. And indeed, let's say a lot of knowledge, Living Lab knowledge is present inside this guy. So if you come to the conference and if he's there, talk to him, because he also has very good perspective and knowledge of the older cases and from Sweden, but also of the newer evolutions. Because yeah, our field is undergoing, and I think as Living Labs we are standing strong, but the area, the environment is really changing fast. So, and as Living Labs we are able, or we should be able, by means of how we work, because we work with these different stakeholders. So we should be future proof, but that shouldn't mean or withhold us from rethinking what we do and how we do it. Do not stick to the same old methods. So I think there's still quite some work for us to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Dimitri, could I ask you also a question about maybe plans moving forward? Because I thought it was really interesting what you shared in a great introduction to the SIG. But if I think about different interest groups, and I think the slide that you've also shared from Chris is quite nice to see areas where work has been done quite a lot, you know, user involvement, co-creation versus, you know, speaking about evaluation, impact. Is there maybe a way for us to think about a workshop to get people together around those themes, about areas where we might want to fill some gaps?
I think we can use, and I hadn't thought about a workshop format yet, but I think it could fit perfectly with the ambition of having this research development session at the conference in Tallinn. So I think that would be an ideal way. So let's talk about that. And also Katarina, a very familiar face for the Living Labs community. So yes, let's do it. I think that's a very, very good idea to make it a bit more hands-on and really divide. Let's see if we have a crowd or not. If it's a small group, let's again go in depth. If we have a bigger group, we could go into separate topics. But yes, let's make that happen. It would be a very good idea.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and if you need support from us, just ring the bell and Chris. Here
I think
to
even
help.
in the 5 minutes that remain, or in future reflections, if there are any needs that people have, that, you know, this is something that we hope that we can do with the special interest group. This first session was, yeah, just to kind of get the ball rolling, but we would like to know more about, you know, what needs you might have and what things you might like to see us do in the conference and outside the conference as well, future sessions and so on. So feel free to reach out after the fact, or as I say, in the 5 minutes that remain.
Yeah, and I saw some very new faces, or that I didn't recognize in terms of the name. So I think that was already a big success. So I hope we will be seeing a lot more of you. And don't hesitate to drop us a line, put us an email if you have any idea, suggestions. We're very open to that, because we wouldn't be Living Lab practitioners if we wouldn't be co-creative ourselves. So please, the idea is really to get you really involved in this, and yeah, let's make it happen, and also let's make it more fun. And indeed, thank you, Lucia, for the tip. We will include also some of the fun pictures, but some of them were not for publication, so I chose the, let's say, the best ones. And Koen and Chris know what I'm talking about. So yeah.
Yes. Thank God I delete these pictures after a while on my phone.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I think we can wrap it up here. Maybe some final words from you, Lucia, from ISPIM.
Yeah, I just wanted to say maybe you can subscribe to our newsletter, so we will we send it every month so you can be up to date with what's happening, all the events from SIG and so on. So that's the easiest way if you're new to ISPIM.
There's a question, Dimitri, about sharing the slides. That would be certainly fine from my
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah, for me as well. So Lucia,
Yeah.
how can we make this happen in the best way? And how can we share maybe the recording? Can we put it somewhere on our web page, which is a bit static at the moment? Can we do that?
Yeah, we can add it also to YouTube, and then I will send slides and email to all registrants.
Okay, that would be great.
Wonderful.
Okay, thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Be careful for the ones who are having snow. Even in Belgium, we are having snow right now. So take care. And here it's a big chaos and a big panic for people because we're really not used to them. Not like the Finns who say, oh, some snow, that's nothing for us. But have a nice day. Have a nice morning, whatever, wherever you are. Thanks a lot. And I hope to see a lot of these faces in the future at the ISPIM events.